All right, y'all. We got another exciting edition of Classic Cuts and Combos right here on Magic 102.1. I was sitting down with one of my partners. I said, man, you know who I'd like to talk to if I could? Remember Pressha, man, had that song Splakavellie back in the day. He was like, yeah. I don't know what happened to him. I said, I don't either. Started playing around. You know, all you got to do is start Googling, hit the Facebook. I'm like, oh, no. I said, he's still out there. I said, he started doing Southern Soul, man. What's going on? I said, man, I got to track him down. So I'm happy to have you here, man, because I want to know this story. I mean, you had these huge records in the 90s, Splakavellie, Do Boy, and all of a sudden, like, what happened?
Yeah,
way,
man.
It's good to see you, man, but I definitely want this story, man. What happened, bro?
Hey, bro, it's good to see you too, man. It's been many years, brother. Too long,
Yes,
man. But I'm glad to see you, man. You look good, sound good, and you're
same to
still
you,
doing
sir.
it, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But we were doing the whole Splakavellie thing, man. We were signed to LaFace Records in the late '90s, early 2000s, and was out there on the road doing our thing. And my manager at the time, road manager Barbara Thomas, God rest her soul, she's passed on since. But around late 2003, she introduced me to this young kid that had just put a song out, and the song was blowing up everywhere. And she told me at the time she was managing a blues artist named Jesse James. I don't know if you remember him or not, but he had this record, I Can Do Bad by Myself, and it was a big blues record, and she was managing him at the same time. She was managing me and another R&B group, Troop. I know you remember Troop.
Absolutely.
She was managing all of us at the same time, and she introduced me to this young kid. She said he used to sing background for Marvin Seats, and I was like, I don't know this kid. And his name was Charles, and he had this record called Is There Anybody Lonely? And when it came out, the record was blowing up. Now this was late 2003. So she put us together around, long story short, she put us together around maybe December, January 2004. And we recorded, he was messing around in the studio, and we recorded. And keep in mind, around this time, there was no quote unquote Southern Soul yet.
Got you.
It was called blues. Some people call it Chitlin Circuit music, however you would call it, but there was no Southern Soul yet.
Yes, sir.
And, we got in the studio and we messed around, and we did a song called Shoot a Wop, and we put it out with myself and Charles, well, y'all know him as Sir Charles Jones.
Yes, sir.
And we put the record out, and it got a whole lot of traction, like real quick. And at the time, Charles was had a road manager, gentleman named Joe Douglas, rest his soul, he's passed on. And we went out on the road, and the rest is history. Mr. David was born. They wanted me to do a separate identity from Pressha because the music had changed. You know, when I put music out, even back when I was signed to LaFace Records, people used to say, L.A. Reid told me one time, he said, son, you riding the fence. And I didn't know what that meant. And he broke it down to me, and he told me, he said, when you listen at your music, he said, it's too old school for the younger folks, and it's too new school for the older folks.
Wow.
And we didn't know exactly where to put it. So basically what we decided to do was just throw it up in the air and let it fall where it would fall at. And at the time, Sir Charles would end his show by thanking the crowd for allowing him to sing the blues, and he would say, I'm just a Southern boy singing the blues. And the phrase Southern Soul was born. He was the first one I ever heard. And when he put out his second record, which was called Friday, he named the album Southern Soul, and a genre was born. And when I put out my second blues record, which was called Slide On. It was a club record. People put it in the Southern Soul category, and Mr. David was born. I started going by Mr. David, and I started getting booked by Mr. David. And Slide On was a huge, huge record, a big success. Shooter Wop, a big success. And to this day, in 2024, we're still being booked off the strength of those two records. And
Wow.
there you have it. But even when we go out and do Southern Soul, they won't let me get out of there until I do Splakavellie.
Okay, and I was gonna ask you, are you still performing? Like, do they ever say, yeah, we know Mr. David, but we want these we want Pressha joints?
Well, see, that's the beauty of booking me. When you book Mr. David, you get Mr. David as well as Pressha. And
Yes,
when
sir.
you book Pressha, you get Mr. David as well as Pressha.
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
get
sir.
two birds with one stone. So, by the grace of God, all this time I've still been able to work off the strength of having double identities, because a lot of promoters book me and I get on the shows, and the audiences don't realize that they're looking at Pressha until I start to break down the origin of Splakavellie, and I started singing Splakavellie, and you just see a gaze go over the crowd, and people are like, "Wow, I didn't know," and they really feel like they got double for their money.
Wow.
Yeah,
So where did the name Pressha even come from in the first place? Now, I think David, if I'm not mistaken, David is your name, actually.
that's my
So that's an
God-given
easier
name.
transition. But where did Pressha
David
come from?
David Jones is my God-given name, and I was given the nickname Pressure back in middle school because I used to fight a lot. I ain't proud of that, but I used to fight a lot. And uh, I grew up in South Carolina, but I was born in New York. So we moved to South Carolina. My family moved to South Carolina when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And, going to school in the country, and I'm from up north. I came off as a weird kid. I talked weird. I dressed weird. And I used to get in fights because of it all the time. And the older cats would say, damn, you putting a lot of pressure on them dudes. And it stuck. And, I know pressure is a popular phrase now with the kids today. But I've been
It was
pressure,
real different down back then. It was real
bro.
different. It was.
I've been pressure for the better part of 30 years, bro.
Say you original Pressure.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Now, I know that I guess we need to go back. I know we're dealing with this, but let me go back a little bit too, because I guess you had some connection with Tony Mercedes as well. I don't remember none of this. And probably
Right,
during that time, I remember all this,
right.
but I had to reintroduce myself to Pressure. I'm like, I don't remember the Tony. I don't remember LaFace. I'm like, how did I fall off on all this information? But how did you get with? And then I think he was in another group before he all
Yeah,
that started.
yeah. And we had a top 10 record. It's a real interesting story, because, and this is kind of how I met you and Jimmy back in the day, when we came through on the promo tour we did.
Wow.
Uh Back in the day, I was signed to Tony Mercedes record, and as a rap artist, believe it or not. That's how I started out,
Mm.
as a MC, as a rap artist, and we came up during the booty shake era, the Luke Skywalker, uh, that whole vibe. We came up
Mhm.
with that whole vibe. Now I'm finna really shock you. Uh, I had a record out, a local record out where I was living at the time. Me and Tony, in Augusta, Georgia, and we put a local record out called Punani, and it was local, but it was gaining steam. And this kid I used to see all the time at the mall in Augusta, Georgia, came up to me one day. Me and my friend, the guy I used to rap with named Tim, he came up to us he handed me a demo tape. He was like, "Man, I think I got something here." At the time, he was in the military. He was on the because Augusta is a military town. There's Fort Gordon there, and he was in the military and worked part-time at the mall selling clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me the tape, and I listened to it. And that same night, I took it to this club that Tony owned at the time. It was the hottest club in town. It's called Club Mercedes. And I took it to the club. I took it to Tony, and I said, "Tony, I know you're doing everything you can to work our record right now, and I know we are catching steam, getting traction on this record. And if you ever see Tony and you ask him, he'll tell you the same story." I
Mm-hmm.
said, "I know you're working our record right now, but you need to take all resources and all energy off of our record, and you need to put this record out because this is a hit record. I don't know the logistics of the music business. I'm not an A&R, but damn it, I know a hit when I hear it. And this record is a hit." He popped the tape in, he listened to the record, and he said, he looked me in the face. "You sure you want me to get off your record and get on this record?" I said, "Yes, sir. You need to put this record out." He put the record out, and 6 months later, we had sold 1 million copies
What record is this?
independently of this record. The guy from the mall, his name was Ira Brown. Y'all know him as LA Snow. The record was called Daisy Dukes.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
And that's how Tony and I went into business together. And we've been inseparable ever since. He's in LA now. I just talked to him the other day, man. That's my guy to the
Really?
day I die.
Wow. Wow.
That record was Daisy Dukes. And after Daisy Dukes went, I want to say 4 times platinum, I went
Mhm.
on tour with Deuce, LA Snow, and Creole D. And
Dude.
yeah. And then after I came off tour with Deuce, we started another group with a friend of mine out of Arizona, a friend of mine named Jan Styles. We did a group called the Southside Boys, and we had a record called Get Ready, Here It Comes. It was the whole Choo Choo Train craze at the time.
Mhm.
After they put out Tootsie Roll, we did this record. And as a matter of fact, before we did this record, Tony facilitated another record from another guy out of Augusta, a guy named 12 Gauge, song
Well,
called Dookie.
yeah, Dookie
Yeah,
Bud, yeah.
yeah, we did that record too. And
I don't remember none of it. I mean, I remember the songs. I don't
you
remember
remember
seeing
the
Tony
records, yeah,
Mercedes'
but you
name on
don't
these
remember.
records.
Yeah, you don't remember the guys behind them. So we did that record, and then after that record, that's when we did the Get Ready, Here It Comes, the Choo Choo record, and we were signed to LaFace Records at the time when we put that record out, and we went top 10. We bust the top 10 open with that record in 1997.
So I'm trying.
And
So where did the transition with R&B coming in? You
I'm I'm, I'm
rapping, you
getting
doing
I'm,
boot.
I'm,
Actually, you're a
I'm
booty artist, really,
yeah,
technically.
man. I'm getting there. I'm getting
Okay,
there.
okay,
See,
okay,
here's the
okay.
thing.
This is a good
I
story. I'm
came
with you.
I, I came into the game doing booty shake rap. That's how I got my foot in the door. And what's crazy is at the time, Tony's wife, Bonnie, was our road manager. And LaFace sent us on a promo tour. And during this promo tour, we came to Houston, and that's where I met you. That's where I met Jimmy, a couple other people. And what's funny is on the way back from Houston, we flew into Atlanta. We flew into Hartsfield Jackson Airport in Atlanta to get off one plane and get on another plane to fly out to LA to go do Soul Train. Uh, in between shows, I would always find a studio in whatever town that I was in, and I would cut demos because I was always a singer. Rap was just my hobby. Singing I always did since I was 7 years old.
Okay.
Started in church, of course.
Yes, sir.
And I would always I would do the group thing, but during our downtime, I would find studios and I would go record my demos. So we went to the airport and Bonnie dropped us off um, to get on the plane to fly to LA. No, to fly to DC and do BET first and then leave there. They had a show called Teen Summit. We did that show. And then we left there to go to fly to the Paramount lot in LA to do Soul Train. Well, when she dropped us off at the airport, I left one of my demos in the van by accident. She picked it up, she put it in, she listened to it all the way home. She must have listened to it about 30 times. She took it home and she gave it to Tony. She said, I don't know what Pressha playing around with, but I think you got something. He listened to it, fell in love with it. He then gave it to L.A. Reid's brother, Brian Reid, who was an A&R at LaFace Records.
I didn't even know LA had a brother.
Yes.
Okay.
Brian, yes. He A&R'd a lot of groups. T.I., Pink, Goody Mob, they all came through Brian Reid.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so he gave the demo to Brian. At the time, L.A. Reid had just had a meeting with Ice Cube about getting some songs for a soundtrack for a movie that he was putting out the following year. Now, mind you, this was 1997. Ice Cube was putting out a movie in 1998 called The Players Club. And he was looking for music to put on this soundtrack. And just so happened, Tony caught L.A. Reid coming out of the meeting, going to the bathroom at the LaFace office in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I know y'all looking for soundtrack songs. I got a little something for you to check out. And mind you, keep in mind, L.A. Reid, he's a music exec, but he was a artist first. He was the drummer for a band called The Deal back in
Yes.
the 80s.
Yes. Yes.
So he was always attracted to stuff with heavy drums in it. So he popped in the song of the demo, which was Splakavellie. And when you hear Splakavellie, the first thing you hear is those drums. Dun, 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 dun. And when he heard that, he immediately gave it to Ice Cube. Ice Cube played it. Not only did he love it, but it was the first single released off of the Players Club soundtrack, the very first single. They only released 2 singles off of that soundtrack. One was Splakavellie, and the other was We Be Clubbing by Ice Cube. Splakavellie went platinum in 2 weeks' time when they released the soundtrack. Wow. 1 million singles in 2 weeks. And mind you, I was still in the group. I was still out on the road with a top 10 record with a rap group.
Wow.
We got back to we were out on tour. I believe, yeah, we were out on tour with, matter of fact, we were out on tour with Luke Skywalker, Raheem the Dream, couple other groups, and I got a phone call from a A&R guy at LaFace. He said, "You are no longer in the Southside Board. You are a solo artist now." And they sent me a ticket and pulled me off tour and flew me back to Atlanta to immediately start recording the album Don't Get It Twisted, because Splakavellie had went #1. And that's the story of how Splakavellie was born.
Damn, I didn't know any of this, man.
And I've been an R&B / Southern Soul Blues singer ever since.
So there won't be no booty shaking reunions and nothing like that going down.
No, it's funny you say that, because I just did a show. Well, I didn't do a show. I guest starred on a show with L.A. Snow doing Daisy Dukes about 2 weeks ago, and that's the first time I did that song with him in probably 15 years.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
all right, man. That's
So
crazy.
we still see each other because see, I'm still gigging and he's still gigging. And
He's
because
still out there doing Daisy
he's
Dukes.
still gigging because see, you gotta understand, Daisy Dukes was a huge rap record, but it was also a huge crossover record. So he had a huge white audience, and he's still white people are very brand loyal.
Mm.
And when they get behind a record, they love it for life. Look at Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Oh yeah, baby got back ain't going nowhere
Bro,
no time soon with that audience.
he's still out there. 69 Boys still out there. Deuce still out there. All of these
What?
artists are still alive because they have that crossover audience.
Wow.
And he can still go in white venues. And same thing with Shadi. MC Shadi, he can still go in white venues during spring break, during homecoming season, and still do gigs
Wow. Did
to
not
this
realize
to
that.
this day.
Did not realize that.
Yeah, man. And it's
Now,
the same thing. It's the same thing with Splakavellie. Splakavellie was such a monumental R&B record. I'm still being booked for that record. I still got shows on the calendar for the remainder of the year for
wow.
for that record to this day,
Did you write
2024.
Splakavellie? Did
I
you write?
wrote Splakavellie. Yes.
Well, now you know we got to deal with this
Yes.
Splakavellie because there will still be some that will not understand what a Splakavellie is. It seemed like it was you explained it in song, but for those that may have forgotten, let's go back down that road. And what did the motivation for the song even come from in the first place?
Okay, I have two sisters, two older sisters. And I would often visit my mother in South Carolina, still in South Carolina. Matter of fact, I'm going down there tomorrow to visit her for Mother's Day. And I would listen to my sisters all the time talk about their boyfriends and how they would cheat on them and this and that and the third. And one day I was just generally listening to their conversation, and one of my sisters said, I wish it was a dude I could just pick up the phone and just call, and he'll come and get me, and we'll hang out and then take me back home, and I ain't got to worry about him. He ain't got to worry about me till the next time. And it kind of stuck because I was also in the military. I'm also a war vet.
Didn't know that, man.
Yeah,
Salute, brother.
I was in Desert Storm in '91, and
Wow. Well, I'm
it's
learning a
it's
lot in this
yeah,
conversation, brother.
it's crazy because when I was in the military, we used to say there was a cadence from an old song Johnny Taylor made back in the '60s, and that cadence went ain't no sense in going home because Jody got your girl and gone.
Yes.
And that cadence was it stuck with me, and I would always think I'm gonna turn that into a song, but I couldn't figure out how. And in that day, I listened to my sister's conversation, and it's crazy. I went to the bathroom, and I was in the bathroom, and it just hit me like a bolt of lightning. Right around that same time, uh, Tupac had a song I called Machiavelli, an album called Machiavelli,
Mm.
and right around in that era, and like I said, I went to the bathroom that day and it hit me like a ton of bricks because on the way to my mama's house, I was listening to another booty shake group out of Atlanta called Splak Pack. I don't know whether you remember Splak
Yeah.
Pack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kid Money and them, God rest his soul, because he's passed on too.
Mm.
Listening to Splak Pack. So I'm in the bathroom and all of that is jumbled up in my mind. Machiavelli, Splak Pack, listening at what my sister's saying, thinking about the marching cadence I used to do, and it just hit me in the face. Splakavellie. And as God is my witness, I got a pen right there in the bathroom, and I wrote the lyrics for Splakavellie on toilet paper. True story. And I went to the studio that night and did the demo for Splakavellie. And I did it real quick. I did it in two parts because I had to go back out on the road with the Southside Boys the next morning. Now, I'm really getting ready to shock you now. Do you remember a soul artist from the late 70s and early 80s named Jean Carn.
Gene Carr, yes, absolutely,
She had
absolutely.
the hits Closer Than Close, Don't Let It Go to Your Head.
Don't let it go to your head. No, 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 no. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Her son, Joe, produced Splakavellie. I recorded Splakavellie at Jean Carn's house in her basement bathroom.
What? This story is crazy, son.
Yes.
This is classic.
360 degrees of R&B. I recorded Splakavellie in Jean Carn's basement bathroom. I cut the her son had a makeshift studio set up downstairs in her basement. And I cut the vocals for Splakavellie in her basement in her bathroom
Wow. That's crazy.
as a demo.
That's crazy.
We never thought anything would come because me, Joe, and I were friends. And what's crazy is I knew his mom, but I didn't know his mom was. I knew Miss Carr, but I didn't know she was Jean Carr.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, until
yeah.
after the fact. And the demo got in the right hands, and it was history from there.
Did you think that that song would be as big as it was? Because first of all, everybody had to learn what a
I did
Splakavellie
not
was.
honestly. I didn't think it was big at all. I didn't think it would be big at all, but it was a monster, and I never saw it coming. But I can tell you why it was big, and I have this conversation with young artists all the time.
Mhm.
When Splakavellie came out, there was a lot of music out, but there was nothing like Splakavellie on the radio. You couldn't listen at Splakavellie and say, "Hey, that sound good. He sound like this one, or he sound like that one." It sounded like nothing that was out. And at the time, people were starving for something new and something different, something they had never heard before. They were hungry for it. And that's what I tell artists today, because I get demos in abundance. I get people sending me songs. I don't know, some for some reason people think I got a record deal in my back pocket or something. 'Cause they always send me music and they ask my advice. And I tell them, when somebody tell you, "Hey, you sound like Lil Wayne," or "Hey, you sound like this one or that one," that's not a compliment.
Mhm.
You shouldn't see, people get so mixed up. They get, it's okay to have influences. It's okay to have Sam Cooke and Bobby Womack are my biggest influences. Those are my musical idols. But what I did was I took a little bit of Sam and I took a little bit of Bobby and I added it to David, and I created a sound and a persona. What these kids are doing is they'll listen at Lil Wayne all day long, all night long, all week long, and then go in the studio and try to cut music. And now, because they've listened to Lil Wayne all day long, all night long, when they go in the studio, now they sound like Lil Wayne. And
Mm.
then when you tell them, you don't want to, they get upset because they don't understand. This sound good. Yeah, it does sound good. Lil Wayne sound good too. It does sound good. If you're trying to get a record deal and you're trying to get put on in this business, what you have to bring to the table is something that no one else has done before. We don't want the next Lil Wayne. We want the first you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
And
love
that's
it.
what I'm trying to tell these kids, man.
Well, man, look, you dropping some gems on me today. Some almost everything that you said I've never heard before.
Yeah, man. It's a bruh. It's a right now, because when Tony moved to LA, he started doing uh documentaries, and he's moving into movie production now, but he's been doing documentaries for about the last 10 years. And he's gonna do a movie on all of this.
He should, man. Tony Mercedes has a very interesting story too, and
Yeah,
all
man.
this
And
should
he's
encompass
he's
all
linked
that.
to he's linked to a lot of hit
He is.
records. Yeah, I bet you a lot of people don't know. Not only does he did he do the Daisy Dukes record, he did the Donkey Butt record, he did Splakavellie, but a lot of people don't know he's credited as a producer on as a writer, I'm sorry, on TLC's hit No Scrubs. That's his record.
Is it really?
Him and Candy Burris, yes. Go back and look at
Wow.
the credits.
I am. As soon as I'm done with this, you know I am.
I'm about to shock you again. I'm gonna tell you another record you need to go back and look at the credits on, because he's credited as a writer as well on this record. There's a white kid in the pop industry named Ed Sheeran.
I'm
He,
obviously familiar with Ed Sheeran.
he had a record in 2001 called The Shape of You, one of the biggest records of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Tony's a writer on that record.
Oh wow.
Yeah, man.
Okay. You dropping some gems on me, man. You
Yeah,
dropping gems on me.
yeah,
Now,
man.
I do have another question though.
Uh-huh.
With all this success that Pressha is having, what happens? Like, he was big, then he came out with Dude Boy, and then it's like, what happened to Pressha?
Well, the transition happened. Like I said earlier, when LA said it best, like, your music was straddling the fence. But the crazy part of it is, now you all call it Southern Soul, but I never changed my musical style. I've always done the same music. It's the demographic that calls it something different now. And all I did was follow my demographic.
Okay.
That's all I did.
Did you know that you was transitioning to that though? Did you know you're
Well,
like, I just felt something?
I didn't, but the late Barbara Thomas told me. She said, on her, as a matter of fact, on her deathbed, she said, "You're gonna do blues from now on until the day you die. You will not be known as an R&B singer anymore." That's what she told me. With the last couple of hours of her life, that's what she told me. And sure enough, because I never stopped putting out music. Here's what happened from a technical standpoint. Right around 2002, 2003, L.A. Reid decided to step down from LaFace Records and go be the president of, I want to say it was, what was the label that Hiram Hicks was running that?
Was it Capitol, Sony, Epic?
I want to say it may have been either Epic or Sony, one of the two. But LA decided to take a job being the president of that company. So he was moving to New York. So he decided in 2002, 2003 to shut down LaFace Records. It was no longer going to be a label, a functioning label anymore. It was just going to be an imprint. And he looked at his roster and he decided to take certain artists with him to his move to New York. And then the other half of the stable, he just decided to release them. When he made the transition, he took TLC, of course. He took Usher. He took Pink. He took Outkast. He took.
Would Tony be a part of that? Tony Braxton.
Tony Braxton. He took Tony Braxton, and he had signed her sisters as a group called the Braxtons. He took. Okay, and then that's all he took, and he released Goody Mob. He released. And he took Donnell Jones. I'm sorry. He released Goody Mob. He released Pressha. He released B-Rock and the Biz. You remember
B-Rock and the Biz?
Yeah. He released them. He released a young rapper he had signed named T.I.
Oh wow.
He went by T.I.P. back then.
Mm-hmm.
He released him. He released he had signed another young singer named Lloyd. He released him.
What?
Yeah. He kept half the stable. He kept his million sellers and he released everybody else.
Were y'all upset about that?
Well, no, we didn't. We weren't upset because number one, we understood it from a business perspective, and number two, he launched us into the stratosphere. But from that point on, it was up to us to stay in the stratosphere. And at that time, music was changing. See, you got to understand. You didn't get social media. There was no social media at the time. There was no there were still viable record labels. But at the time, there was this artist that was signed to So Def slash Sony that was teaching people the game of independence, and his name was Little John. And at the time, everybody was trying to make the transition from being on a label to being independent because the net was greater. You know, you no longer had the machine behind you, but you made more money.
Yes, sir.
So you got to understand, we went when we were released from the face, we went totally independent. We didn't have the national push. We didn't have the machine behind us anymore. But from the work that we had already did, we never stopped. It's May 10th, 2024. And this was 2003. And I've never stopped being booked.
Wow.
I've never stopped performing. So when you say what happened to Pressha, nothing happened to Pressha. Pressha grew up and he kept eating.
Yes, sir.
I've never stopped. My fans stayed with me through the whole ride. I would continue to put out music independently, and we had garnered a built-in fan base to the point where it supported us and still supports us throughout these years. I still get of course, I'm ASCAP, BMI, sound scan, sound exchange. I still get all of those checks, and it's crazy because you get those checks every quarter and you open it up and you look at it and you still being played in Bali and Dubai and Japan and Guatemala and it's weird. Splakavellie is that record that won't die. You can't kill it. You cannot kill it. And it's a blessing and a curse because it's a blessing because that record has fed me all these years. It's put all my kids through school. It bought me a house, all of those things. It bought me several cars, and it still pays me to this day. But the curse part is I've constantly, since 2004, I've put out probably 10 albums. And we do good on the Southern Soul side, but on the national side, it's a curse because anytime I'm booked on a show, nobody wants to hear anything except Splakavellie.
Yeah.
And that's another reason for the Mr. David moniker and the character transition, because it allows me to live as another artist and have another life as an artist, because with Pressha, my life is only the extension of Splakavellie. But with Mr. David, I have other hits. I have Shooter Wop. I have Slide On. I have the new record that I just sent you, Sugar Daddy. I can live under the moniker of Mr. David, but I still live as Pressha, but only to a limit, only to that cliff. And then I have to jump over to the blues side. So it was to answer your question, the transition from Pressha to Mr. David was a way to continue to live as an artist and not just have one record.
Man, this is a great story. I felt like you just gave me an audio movie because you talking, but I'm in my head doing all this.
Yeah,
putting these things in place and remembering this and remembering that, man.
You have to be strategic in order to have longevity in this business. And trust me, you putting it together in your head, but it's going down on film. Believe me when I say. Now it might have to have a parental advisory sticker on, but it's going down as a film, believe me.
Now, how often do you do shows in Houston?
Um, I was recently in Killeen. I was recently in New Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I was recently in Dallas, but I haven't been back to Houston in quite some time, and it's kind of heartbreaking because the last time I was in Houston, I learned about the death of a friend of mine. I used to go out on the road and with the group H Town,
Yeah.
and me and Dean O'Connor became real close.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't learn about his death until I was performing in, not in Houston, I was in San Antonio at a club, and I learned about his death. And I think the last club we did in Houston was a club, I don't know if it's still there, it's called Chocolate Town or Chocolate City,
Chocolate.
something like that. Yeah, yeah,
That's on that north side. Chocolate.
yeah,
Oh
yeah. You
my
already
God.
know.
It's a legendary
Yeah,
club, bro.
yeah,
Legendary.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that was the last time we was booked in
Wow.
so I've been all in the surrounding areas, but I haven't been back to Houston in a
Oh man,
while.
we want to do something about that, man. All
Yep,
these Southern
yep.
soul shows they have here, and they ain't brought you in here.
Oh
I'm
man.
embarrassed, bro. I'm
Yeah,
embarrassed.
we need to make it happen, baby.
Yes,
Ain't
sir.
nothing to be,
Yes,
hey, ain't nothing to be embarrassed about because if we ain't got nothing else, we still got time.
sir.
Yeah, yeah,
Man,
man.
these are some great stories, man. I'm embarrassed. Um, and I know everyone is living their life. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's living their life and trying to survive.
No
Uh,
doubt.
some of these songs, though, that song was one of the premier. Like, I don't know if you go back and you can look at the charts back from that time in Houston. That song was
Oh no,
ridiculous,
believe me, I know how monumental we were
ridiculous.
in Houston. Houston showed us mad love, man, and I'll always view Houston as a second home for me, man. I'll never forget it. And what's crazy is Splakavellie has taken on a whole. My kids put me on the game. See, all my kids are grown now, man. My baby girl just turned 21, and my oldest boy is 30. Well, in October he'll be 37 years old. That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah,
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 and they
yeah.
put me on the game, man. They put me on TikTok. I ain't know nothing about this. See, I don't know nothing about this social media stuff. And they came to me one day and they said, Dad, look, Splakavellie going crazy on TikTok. And they put their whole pages dedicated to Splakavellie. I sat one day when they showed me, and I was on TikTok probably 8, 9 straight hours looking at nothing but people across the world. There was a dance craze in Asia last year, a dance craze that went viral. Uh, Asian dancers doing routines to Splakavellie. I swear to God, if you go to YouTube right now and put in Splakavellie Asian dance craze,
It'll
watch
pop up.
watch the video. Not it, maybe about 100, 200 videos. Watch it pop up. I didn't even know it was going crazy over there like that,
Wow. That's a blessing, man.
bruh. It's the gift that keeps on giving, man. I mean, it. You can't again ringtones and you can't kill it. It won't die. It will not die.
Well, I'm glad it won't die. I'm glad that I caught up with you. It's been an absolute pleasure because your song is like 2 or 3 songs from that period that are right here that
Yeah,
won't get out of my head that got requested all the time. Your
yeah,
song, there was another song by a cat named Rome. I
yeah,
belong to you.
yeah. I
And
just did some shows with Rome, man. Rome's still
what?
out there.
Rome is still out there too.
Yeah,
Oh my
me,
God.
me, Rome, and you remember Metron?
What was the song he did? He was
He
hot
sound
during in the
the guy that sounded like R. Kelly.
You know what? He was big. He was big during that
He
time
did
too,
that
because
song.
everybody was talking about
He
in
did
the.
the song "Loving Each Other for Life."
Hey man, I gotta find that. I gotta find
Bro,
that. I'm glad you said that. He
we
was
were
Swiss
just
too.
out. We were just out gigging together, man, on this '90s vibe thing, man. Me, Metron, and Rome. And when I tell you we did like 5 dates, and the dates were like running over, Pat. Man, everybody's trying to get that '90s vibe, that '90s R&B vibe
And I'm
again.
glad you said that. What do you think it is? Was that period so good? I mean, even with young kids, if you notice, man, young kids is listening to the 90s. The 90s is hot all over again.
Well, I can tell you what it is, man. In the '90s, from the mid to the late '90s, R&B reached a boiling point. When you put on a pot of water, it simmers at first, and then it builds up to the point where it's so hot it boils over. Okay, it was simmering in the '70s. It was getting hot in the '80s, and it boiled over in the '90s, and I was blessed to be a part of that history, man. We'll guys like me and Rome and Neutron and groups like Troop and Jodeci and H Town and bruh, we will go down in history. We marked a time in music when the music was pure. There was no junk, and it was articulate. Now we can talk. Back then, we could do music and tell a female that we not only we loved her, but we wanted to get in bed with her. But it was slick and it was articulate. Nowadays, they just cut to the chase. I wanna do you up against the wall and blah 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 blah. That's why kids today, Gen Zers, love '90s R&B music because it was a way for them to communicate without having to open it. Because if you notice, kids, and it's the damnest thing I ever seen in my life, kids will get on the phone and text each other back and forth all day long when they could just simply push a button and call them and talk to them.
Mm.
They don't
Yes,
want to talk. But with '90s R&B, we ain't got to talk because the music says it all.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Netflix and chill. We can just put on some old '90s R&B, and you already know what it is because the record is telling you what it is. He ain't your boyfriend and he ain't your husband. He's just somebody you can call when your body needs a fix, and he'll put you in the mix and have you asking, "What's my name? Say my name."
I'm leaving that right there, man. I
Yes, sir.
so hope that we get an opportunity to see you here in the H Town, man. It's a pleasure to talk to you again. It's been like 100 years.
Hey,
Uh,
man,
and I'm
it's been a
ashamed that
pleasure.
I didn't know that you still out there doing it and switched up the name a little bit. But I'm glad that I found out. Glad
Bruh,
to see you still
still out there
doing
doing my thing, man, and let all the promoters know in the area. Y'all can call me direct. It ain't no middleman. You can book me direct. Let's go. I'm ready. Like, let's do it. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna call you Mr. David now, aka Pressure. Uh,
That's what everybody else calls me. That's precisely what they when they book me on shows. It's Mr. David, aka Pressure.
aka Pressure. Hey man,
Yeah.
I love it, man. Thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate the history. Oh my God, it's like you was like a book. I'm like flipping through. I'm like, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. I
Hey man,
appreciate that.
I thank you for the love and I thank you for keeping it about the music, man, and keeping it alive. I love your transition, man. Your
Thank
your AC transition and anytime you need me, you know you can call me for anything, man. And I love you, brother. I appreciate you.
you. Love you back, man. Thank you, Mr. David. I appreciate you, brother.
Salute.
Yes, sir. Salute back, man. Have a great weekend, homie.
You too, brother.
All right, peace.